It is a true pleasure to stand here this morning and talk to all of you about bringing this manhunt to a successful conclusion, and without getting anyone else hurt, most importantly. None of this would be possible without the support of this team, represented by members of various agencies standing with us up here, by others standing throughout this fire hall, and by still more who are out there in the field. So let me give you a few details about how this unfolded. As you know, we have been working most recently in a perimeter established in northern Chester County. Last night, shortly after midnight, a series of events started to unfold. First, we had a burglar alarm at a residence near Prizer Road within the perimeter. Our people investigated that, did not find Cavalcante there or anyone else, but it started to bring some of our people into that area. We had been searching an area not far from there already with some tactical teams that night. There was an aircraft overhead utilizing FLIR technology, and close to 1 a.m. picked up a heat signal that they began to track. It was west of PA 100 and north of Prizer Road. Tactical teams began to converge on that location where the heat source was moving. Unfortunately, we had a weather system that also came in, and we had lightning that was flashing all around, and it caused the aircraft to have to depart the area. Tactical teams made a decision to secure that area, that smaller area, as best they could, and hold it through the storm and until we could bring additional resources in and bring aircraft back overhead to ensure that we did not have an issue with an escape. That resumed early this morning, and shortly after 8 a.m., tactical teams converged on the area where the heat source was. They were able to move in very quietly. They had the element of surprise. Cavalcante did not realize he was surrounded until that had occurred. That did not stop him from trying to escape. He began to crawl through thick underbrush, taking his rifle with him as he went. One of the Customs and Border Control teams, BORTAC, had a dog with them. They released the dog. Some of our PSP CERT members were also there, had him surrounded. The dog subdued him, and team members from both of those teams immediately moved in. He continued to resist, but was forcibly taken into custody. No one was injured as a result of that. Excuse me. He did sustain a minor bite wound. We had medical personnel at the scene, and they took a look at that. Cavalcante was, as I said, taken into custody. He was transported to our Avondale station for further processing and interview, and he will ultimately be transferred to a state correctional institute where he will be housed and begin to serve his life sentence. In just a few minutes, I'll open this up to some questions, but before I do that, I want to turn this over to one of our very close partners, District Attorney Deb Ryan. I know she would like to say a few words, and again, then we'll be happy to take your questions following that. Deb.
Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel Bivens. Today is a great day here in Chester County. Our nightmare is finally over, and the good guys won. We owe a debt of gratitude to all of the first responders for their tireless and dedicated efforts in bringing this fugitive to justice. They worked around the clock, and we are deeply grateful to all of them. Our community can finally regain its normalcy and breathe a collective sigh of relief. This would not have happened without the collaboration and efforts on behalf of a multitude of agencies. I need to thank the Governor, Colonel Paris, Lieutenant Colonel Bivens for his unflappable and dedicated leadership, the U.S. Marshals, the Chester County detectives, the FBI, U.S. Customs and Border Patrol, the Department of Emergency Services, the Sheriff's Department, and every single person who went out into the field in the most horrendous conditions. We had weather problems, we had terrain problems, and a ton of obstacles that prevented our capture from occurring as expediently as we wanted. We have the best people in the business, and we never lost faith that this capture would occur. We knew that it was just a matter of time. The scope of this manhunt was extremely impressive. The brave men and women who went out there every single day are our heroes. And I am proud to be a part of this collective team of people who worked around the clock to bring this man to justice during this monumental challenge. They utilized every piece of advanced technology, dogs, drones, helicopters, every asset available was put out for this capture. I can't express our gratitude deep enough to all of them and to the community for their support. We received dozens and dozens of donations, well wishes, and kind support from everyone in the community, and we thank this firehouse for housing us. We know we disrupted their lives for a while. One of the first calls we made upon learning about this capture was to the Brandow family, who, as you can imagine, had been living in a complete nightmare. They are so grateful to the men and women who helped with this capture. They can now finally sleep again. I can't thank law enforcement enough for their efforts. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we will be happy to take your questions. Yes.
With the helicopter overboard, we saw the arrest taking place. There was some criticism about the photo op that was taken with the fugitive. Can you explain how that's actually a standard procedure, or what's the reasoning behind the photo op with the fugitive?
You know, I'm aware that there was a photo op that was taken out there. Those men and women worked amazingly hard through some very trying circumstances. They're proud of their work. I'm not bothered at all by the fact that they took a photograph with him in custody. Again, they're proud of their work. They kept the community safe. I say thanks to them and good job.
Sir, did he say anything in the moment that he was captured, and you released the name of the canine officer who bit him during his capture?
We will probably not be releasing the name. And in terms of anything that he said, we need to use an interpreter, and he has been taken back to the station, and at that point, we will attempt to interview him at the Avondale station.
Did he say anything upon capture? Anything at all?
I'm not aware of it. If he did, I don't have that information.
Your officers were authorized to use lethal force if he didn't actively surrender. Was the goal to always take him in alive?
That's always our first choice and preference. Again, that option is only to prevent the escape of a very dangerous individual. Had they not been able to contain him, that would have remained an option.
Who specifically made the arrest? Which organization?
It was a combination. It was a combined group of the Border Patrol and PSP.
At 1 o'clock captured. When he went into the van, he was stripped and had his tattoos photographed. Is that normal procedure?
Yes.
When the thermal imaging happened at 1 o'clock, was he in the same location when you found him?
Wait, I'm sorry. You'd ask first, man.
Was he asleep when you found him?
He was proned out. I've not been told that he was asleep. I'm told that he was proned out trying to hide and then began to crawl away.
Was it the same location when you got the thermal imaging at 1, you found him at 8?
It was in that close proximity to that, yes.
What was whether anyone was helping him?
No one was assisting him at that point.
Sir, what was the agency that was flying the helicopter that first spotted the key?
That was the DEA, and that was a fixed-wing aircraft.
Were you worried as law enforcement that you had to down the plane and there could be another chance for escape? I mean, that's obviously the plane had to land, but what kind of risk did you have to calculate with that?
Well, you know, as I've told you throughout this investigation, there are always things we have to contend with. Everything isn't scripted and doesn't go perfectly. And so it's just another challenge. Worried, I don't think, is the word that I would use. We simply had to adapt. And so we secured that inner perimeter while always keeping our outer perimeter secure, so that if he did manage to get out of that inner, we would box him in yet again.
How tough an adversary was he? He led some very high-profile, difficult manhunts. How tough an adversary was he compared to some of
You know, I don't know that he was particularly skilled. He was desperate, and I've said that all along. You have an individual whose choice is go back to prison and spend the rest of your life in a place you don't want to be, or continue to try and evade capture. He chose the evade capture. He was in good shape, obviously able to climb, as you saw, to get out of prison. But ultimately, as I said all along, we had an amazing team assembled here, capabilities that are just very formidable. And I was confident all along that he would eventually be captured. And ultimately, this team, and I credit all of them for bringing together their collective experience, the resources, and being able to apply that and capture him. It's never easy to find someone who doesn't want to be found in a very large area.
Sir, previously you said you were reserving comment on if anybody was helping him throughout the search. I know you said no one helped him this morning. Can you say now that he's in custody whether he received help these last 13 days?
There were people who were intent and intended to assist him. We had been successful, to the best of my knowledge, we had been successful in preventing that assistance from reaching him.
Does that include a sister?
Yes.
There had been some frustration, some criticism from the public as this was stretching on. Now that it's over, do you consider this anything other than a success?
No, it was absolutely a success. And I got to tell you, I think by and large the public stayed amazingly supportive. I had some third grade students stop by yesterday and drop off letters and notes of support for all of these responders. We put them out for them to see at briefing time and things. That's the kind of support we saw from this community. There will always be criticism. There will always be people who think they can do this job better, and they're entitled to that opinion. What I would tell you is, again, I put my faith in this group of experts, this group of seasoned law enforcement professionals, the dedicated men and women, not only of the Pennsylvania State Police, but of all of the other partner agencies who went out there every day. I'll put my money on them any day of the week. And I believe the community supported them and continues to.
Will he be charged with escape, and when will those charges be filed?
We'll be discussing with the district attorney what, if any, charges will be filed. But for right now, again, there is a commitment, and he is going to begin serving his life sentence at a state correctional institution.
When was his sister now?
She is in the deportation proceedings. That will proceed as had been initiated.
Cavalcante got the Eagles?
I'm sorry?
You know where Cavalcante got the Eagles hoodie from?
I do not.
Other than the rifle, what did he have with him? Did he have anything else?
Just the clothing and things that he was wearing.
Did he
at the time.
attempt to shoot? Did he attempt to try to disengage?
He did not have an opportunity to, no,
How
sir.
many officers were on the ground as you confirmed?
I don't have an exact number, but looking at the teams we were sending in there, in the immediate vicinity was probably 20 to 25.
And can you tell us more about what those 20 to 25 look like? Like, did they have specific armor? What
Yes, they were tactical. They were a tactical team. You would expect camouflage, full armor, long rifles, that kind of thing.
Which agencies?
Customs and Border Patrol was their BORTAC team out of El Paso, and then Pennsylvania State Police CERT. It's our Special Emergency Response Team.
Colonel, once on the ground, they've now pinpointed him, right? They're
Yes.
on the ground and they're quietly moving in place. Length of time?
From that point, probably 5 minutes. It played out fairly quickly once they had identified him and moved in. He detected them at that point once they were already in position, and again, he started to crawl away, and it played out very quickly then.
Sir, what is your greatest lesson from this 14-day manhunt?
You know, I don't know that there's any single lesson. I will tell you that I learned something from all of these, and as I told you before, I bring that experience to the next one. And so I just go back to, it's all about the team. It's about assembling the right group of people, the right technology, the people with can-do attitudes who will stick with you through the investigation, and that's what we did. And it's worked well for us in the past, and I'm sure will work well for us in the future.
Colonel, said there were people intending to help. I just want to see if we can get a little more detail from you on that. You did mention, you did confirm the sister was intending to help. Who else might have been intending to help? And then can you give us any
And the reason I'm not going to talk about that again, as I mentioned, we will be discussing with the district attorney whether there will be any additional charges. I don't expect that there will be on that aspect, but we want to have that discussion before we before we disclose anything else.
Help the police to catch him? Did he stop because of the rain? Is that right?
No, I think he
Bivens
stopped
addressing
because
the media
his,
after the capture,
normal-
successful capture of Danelo Cavalcante on the run 2 weeks and terrorizing that region about 30 miles north of the prison where he escaped, 50 miles to the west of Philadelphia. But he was captured this morning, resisting till the end, according to authorities just now in that news conference. I want to turn to NBC's George Solis, who has followed this story from the very beginning. George, what more can you tell us about what the officer said there?
Yeah, Savannah, the beginning of the end appearing to happen around midnight this morning when Cavalcante tripped a burglar alarm that prompted a large police response. Then they brought out thermal imaging from an aircraft that was in the area. Weather, of course, stopping part of that. So those tactical teams choosing to stay there overnight. And then ultimately they found him there in this brush area, this 8 to 10 square mile perimeter they had been canvassing. He still had the rifle on him. He did not want to give up, it sounds like. And he started to crawl through some of that really thick brush there. Ultimately, a canine was brought in, and that canine helping with his capture. The lieutenant colonel was saying about 20 to 25 teams of tactical officers responded, descended on him, surrounded him. That dog taking a bite of Cavalcante. He has now been taken to a police barrack in Avondale, where they will ultimately be taken to a state correctional facility, bringing this nightmare to an end of this community over the last 2 weeks, Savannah.
And he will continue his life without prison term for the murder of his former girlfriend. George Solis on the story this morning. You can find more coverage on NBC News Now. Full wrap-up tonight on NBC Nightly News. We'll return most of you now to the Today Show. I'm Savannah Guthrie. This has been an NBC News Special Report.